Hey, everybody. When dementia is involved, many families expect or know about financial scams outside of the home, but rarely do they think about financial risks within the home. The fact is that when judgment declines, a loved one may overspend, they may give money away impulsively, or even make unsafe financial decisions. And in this video, we'll talk about how to protect their future and at the same time protecting their dignity. My name is Matthew Estrad. I'm a gerontologist in St. Tammany Parish, and I've been partnering with the Council on Aging in St. Tammany for over 11 years as their caregiver support group facilitator, which I still do. And about half of that time in bringing you online education like this in caregiver coffee conversations. So today's a very important topic. Before we get into it, just a little bit about that caregiver support group that I am blessed to lead. We meet every Tuesday evening from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And like I said, it is every Tuesday evening unless it falls that Tuesday is a Christmas Eve. Mardi Gras Day is always on a Tuesday, right? But when there's a holiday or if I'm out of town, we usually, instead of cancel, we usually end up shifting that to another day that week. So we've been doing that very consistently for a long time. You can find out more information like where we are in person and how we meet virtually, and when we do that during the week by going to coastseniors.org, and then you can navigate over to the caregiver services, and then you'll find your way to caregiver support groups. You'll be able to download a flyer that we renew every 2 months because we have a 2-month calendar on there. So we just refresh it when it is outdated. And from there, you can also find a way to join the free support group email list, where that gets you a reminder every Tuesday morning as to how we're going to have the support group, whether it's online or in person. And then if it's online, you'll get the Zoom link then. And then also when we have a new 2-month flyer come out, you get that email to you also. So it's great to just sign up for that and let it come to you. And we hope that you will join us with no obligation. It is completely free and sponsored by Coast. And we just encourage you to check it out at least one time to see if it is for you. And if the time is not for you or you want a different group, let me know, because I know a lot of facilitators, both in person and online locally, and can get you to a support group as long as you get to one. All right, so jumping back to our topic of the financial risk coming from within the home. This video, like the previous one, the part 1 that talked about external threats and scams, the video draws upon the Consumer Financial Protective Bureau guidance on diminished financial capacity, the Alzheimer's Association 2025 Dementia Care Practice Recommendations, and research by Lichtenberg and colleagues on impaired financial decision-making in dementia. Additional insights come from the National Institutes on Aging, AARP National Public Policy Institute, and the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority regarding trusted contacts, spending limits, and cognitive decline. And I'll put all of these sources that I mentioned in the description of the video. There might be some overlap between the previous presentation or video, part 1 of financial exploitation, and this one. So just bear with me. There will be some overlap. And I also want to say this is an even more sensitive topic. And while we're going to present some ideas and some things that are certainly out there to help, I recognize that all of these things can be a prudential judgment, your best judgment as to protecting your loved one's independence and dignity, also protecting assets. I do welcome comments and questions in the comment area of where you see this posted. So if you have additional ideas, you can certainly say that, but this is not going to be a perfect one-size-fits-all and will require a lot of prudential judgment, like I said before. So keep that in mind as we go through these. It is not perfection, but these are things that to consider. All right, so you know already that dementia impacts executive function. So it's planning, reasoning, and impulse control. And people may forget previous purchases or bills. Emotional decision-making can increase with this. So this coming from a really good place, like I want to help and I feel bad saying no. That can be online, that can be in person, someone asking for money. It can be through the mail. So you just never know. And past roles, such as a provider, a parent, a worker, may resurface and drive some of the spending because, as we've talked about in previous videos, someone who's living with dementia, they may be disoriented in time and place and feel like they are like still working, or they may still think that they they really belong in a home that they were in decades ago. So they're, that may play in with the whole role confusion and being able to having to provide for certain people. And judgment declines before memory does. So I think that's something really important to remember. The judgment can decline, or does decline, generally speaking, long before memory does. And it's not irresponsibility of the person, it's the cognitive change, it's the dying of the brain. So let's talk about some common patterns of money we'll call misuse, and we'll put them in quotes, because this is all in the context of having a cognitive impairment. So there's overspending. This can be online shopping, of course. This can be the form of duplicate purchases, forgetting that they've made a purchase, that same purchase already. Subscription traps, so joining a subscription and completely forgetting about it. Buying items that you don't need, or that will still say that they don't need. There's also the category of unsafe generosity, giving money to strangers. This can be over tipping, donating repeatedly to a point where it could be even deemed excessive. And that's even to legitimate charities. In the previous video, we talked about fake charities being a culprit. Well, these could be genuine 501c3 people doing really good work, but it's more than what they had in the past because of the impairment. Sending money to friends or neighbors, and these can be, even new friends, like we talked about in the previous video. You might see impulsive withdrawals like ATM visits, large cash withdrawals, or just giving cash away just in case. They can go the opposite way. It could be forgetting to pay bills. So missed payments, late fees that are stacking up, the shut off risk for utilities. So again, in the previous video, we talked about the scammer who calls and says that they're from the utility company and we're going to shut you down. We're going to shut your utilities off if you don't send us money. In this case, it's a real utility, and the person is in danger of being shut off. So here are some ways that provide for gentle, dignity-preserving intervention. So again, just ideas for your prudential judgment. Really think about it as financial scaffolding. So the scaffold when there's a building or the facade, somebody's working on the facade of a building, they put up scaffolding to support movement throughout and protecting the job, protecting the workers, and really just makes things easy. So we're creating scaffolding in a sense. So think about limited cash access. This could be a small weekly allowance. It could be keeping cash in a controlled location. It can be using envelopes labeled by purpose. Think about prepaid cards that have their own spending limits, some that reload as needed. And these can be great for small purchases where someone cannot overspend because it's loaded. And if for some reason they were to misplace it or lose it or get it stolen, that is also not a huge loss. Think about automatic bill pay, then this can help prevent the missed payments. As long as bills are roughly the same, even if they fluctuate, a lot of times they can average. So that is one option. It can help reduce confusion. It can simplify monthly routines. You can just kind of know that's going to happen in the background and forget about it. You can think about visual budgets. If the person wants to be involved, continue to be involved, this might simplify things. So having some simple charts that have budgets, different color-coded categories. You can go over, this is what we spend each week, this is what we expected, and this is what we actually did spend, and this is how much we have left over. So just to whatever detail they are wanting to know and that you are able to collaborate with. Think about choice within boundaries, saying, would you like to buy this or would you like to buy that? So kind of indicating that there's a choice. We have so much money, you could spend it on this item or that item. What do you prefer? Let's pick one thing to do today. Especially if it's going to be, spending money. Saying we can get to that next week, and honestly doing that if the person is still interested the next week. So the autonomy doesn't disappear, it just becomes more guided. And, as I, talk about these things, I know that, as an individual, I like independence. I like to make my decisions. Some of these, sound even a little restrictive for me, but I do know that they come from a good place. They provide that scaffolding and can really help protect that person and their assets so that they're able to continue to use them and have them. Could be for just continuing to pay for things for themselves, or even it might be needed for care in the future, like, to take care of them, to keep them in the home. So I kind of like to think of it that way. So I definitely see both sides, and I try to see through the eyes of the person who is having a cognitive impairment and wants to spend their resources. Working with financial institutions, there's some overlap with the previous video, so be aware of that. There's something called, in many institutions, certainly not everyone, I can't speak to that, but many institutions have a view-only access, where a caregiver can monitor and just look for anything abnormal. Their loved one still controls their spending, and there's no loss of dignity. There are transaction alerts. These can be text alerts for you and for the person. So purchases, withdrawals, you can opt for emails instead. You can get daily balance notifications. You can think about spending caps, so daily debit limits, ATM withdrawals, credit card caps, things like that. Trusted contact designation. This allows businesses to contact you if something seems off, like if their software or a person that monitors things sees something is just not right or it's abnormal. They can let you know. It does not give you control, but it's giving you an alert. It's giving you a heads up. It preserves autonomy while adding a safety net. There can be fraud flagging notes on an account. The bank can monitor for unusual activity again. They can pause large transfers, and they can require verbal confirmation. And I can't remember if I mentioned it in this video or a previous video, but in a particular bank account that I have, I'll get alerts from time to time for a certain company because they want to make sure that it's a legit purchase. So, all I do is respond to the text and say yes, and then the transaction goes through. Let's see, you can consider dual signature checks where two people must sign, and this can prevent large impulsive spending. Of course, with these things, we need the cooperation of the person who has the cognitive impairment. So there's, I think it's important to have conversations ahead of time as far as like if there is a need, kind of get their opinion of how they would like to see things played out best case scenario. Then there are bank level monitoring programs. So many banks have elder fraud teams who are specialize in this, and you could possibly ask for heightened monitoring because of your older adult who has a cognitive impairment, and ask for cognitive vulnerability flags. So, and really, I've mentioned this in a previous video. So these elder fraud teams, talk with them, be proactive, hear what wisdom they have, what anecdotes and stories they have, protecting other identities, of course. But what have they learned, and what could you do to protect your loved one and protect dignity as well? Then there are some legal and ethical tools when needed. So, of course, durable power of attorney allows caregivers to act when needed, and this is something that has to be set up ahead of time. And this is when something triggers the authority for you to act on your loved one's behalf. So, and it does not remove authority unless it's actually activated by some kind of event or other thing. A representative payee with Social Security, they manage Social Security income, and it's used when judgment is significantly impaired. Conservatorship and guardianship, and this is an absolute last resort. This is involving the court. This is when safety of that person is at risk. And that's when that person is actually making the decisions on behalf of the person, and they no longer have decision-making power or ability. So, and that's why that's the very last resort. And you want to have things in place to absolutely avoid that the best that you can. So some ethical principles that we've kind of been interweaving and talking about anecdotally are autonomy for that person to continue to make decisions for themselves, safety, so protecting their assets so that they are able to use them for themselves and however they wish to do that, and eventually it might be for their own care to keep them in their home. By bringing in paid sitters, et cetera, and other help. We want to always use the least restrictive option, and we want to protect their dignity and just their confidence and how they see themselves. We're doing that as much as possible. So legal tools should support independence and not replace it. So, and we're almost done. I know we're going kind of long. But this is a huge topic. So how to preserve autonomy while reducing risk. Here are some ideas. Involve them in the decisions. Say things like, let's decide together, and be genuine. Ask what option feels best to you and get their feedback. Allow for small purchases. This maintains dignity. It reduces frustration. It prevents rebellion. Encourages cooperation and safety. Think about control cash allowance. This is predictable, it's safe, it's respectful. Validate feelings. So if someone wants to, as someone wants to give money and contribute to nonprofits and other organizations, you can validate feelings like, I know that you want to help. You've always been so generous to them. Let's make sure that we do this safely. And I would even say, if they want to spend more than they have before, try to show them the history of how they've contributed in the past, and maybe you can persuade them to continue at that level. They're still giving, but it is aligned with what they've always done. So money misuse, I'll put misuse in quotes, is common and preventable. So there are ways to protect your loved one's future without taking away their autonomy, their dignity, and their identity. And these small backstops can create a big safety net. And last thing I want to say is conversations ahead of time. So before there's a cognitive impairment, and yes, it's a really awkward conversation, but I think if you come to it in a way of, hey, if in the future you develop a cognitive impairment, at what point would you want me to step in and to put in some of these backstops and become more involved in your finances so that you don't misuse because of the particular disease, and see what happens with that. Of course, that involves a lot of trust, and hopefully you have that trust and that relationship developed. But I think that's a good way to kind of open the door. Just like I think it's a good idea to have that same conversation about driving. Mom, Dad, at what point should we step in and limit driving, or what are your thoughts on driving into old age? And that's actually no matter whether it's a cognitive impairment or physical impairment. And then there are other topics. You can talk about firearms. At what point would it be more safe to have them, XYZ somewhere else or something like that? So opening the conversation, it's a huge trust thing. You're making yourself vulnerable by even opening the door to this conversation, and they're being vulnerable if they are to accept that prompt and to see if they want to have that conversation. So, and just remember, if you have that courage and you start that conversation, and if they're not open to it, I would not think that that's the end of it. You've planted a seed, and it's there to let it grow, or even bring up again in 3 to 6 months. So at least you have done a really good thing. You have done a really positive thing. You've done the right thing in opening that conversation, and we're just going to hope that it is nurtured through trust, so that they can have the best possible experience growing old in these different risky situations: driving, finances, firearms, etc. There's many others. So thank you all for watching this video. I've certainly enjoyed making it. I hope it's giving you some ideas to then again exercise your prudential judgment in protecting your loved ones, your grandparents, your parents, your spouse, etc. If you liked it, share it with others. If you think it'd be helpful, certainly please do that. Thanks for supporting the Council on Aging in St. Tammany. Thanks for coming back to these videos. And again, we just hope they're really helpful. Until next time, take care and be well.